Welcome to part 3 of my inventory tutorial. If you're interested in the 2 other parts of this tutorial, you can find them in the video description below. So this tutorial is going to focus on tooltips, and tooltips is the information you'll get whenever you mouse over an icon in your inventory. So if I mouse over this item here, for example my health potion, you'll see that it's a health potion because it's written as the top line, and then it's written what it's going to happen if I use it. So if I use this, it'll restore an amount of health. And if I mouse over my mana potion, you'll see that it restores an amount of mana instead. As you can see, nothing happens if I mouse over the empty slots, and that's also some functionality we're gonna put in, so it only reacts whenever you mouse over an item or a slot that has an item. So right now there's not much information about 2 potions, so I have tried to make this as dynamic as possible, so it makes it very easy for us to add different information to our items, so that we can show it in our tooltip. I don't know what kind of games you guys are making, so I've tried to make it more dynamic so you can actually just add whatever and then it should be shown in the tooltip. For example, if I want to change my mana potion into a sword, the type here is not relevant right now because there's no functionality for it, but let's say that I want to create a sword that gives me 120 strength and 0 intellect, and it gives me 50 agility and then 150 stamina. And the name of my sword is just going to be Awesome Sword. And then the description, if you don't want a description, just leave it out, but the description could be, this is an awesome sword. So now I have added the description and everything, but I also want to change the icon, so you can just click on your icon and then change the icon to the correct icon is to show in the inventory. So now it shows the sword whenever I pick up a mana potion. Of course, if when you have implemented this, you just create a new item instead of changing your mana, but this is just the fastest way to show you how this is going to work. So other than that, I also added a quality to the items, so you can pick what kind of item it is. Right now it is common, but for example I want to make my sword let's say epic, for example. So now when I pick up my mana potion, instead I get a sword, and it's an epic sword, so when I mouse over it you'll see that it's written in purple now, and it's like an awesome sword. This is an awesome sword, and it says that this is just the equipment stats. For example, it will give me 120 strength, 50 agility and 150 stamina. And as you can see, that quality here changes the color of the item. So if I want to make a legendary sword instead of an epic, for example, when I pick it up, you'll see that the color is written in orange now instead of the purple one as before. So that's basically what we are gonna do for this tutorial. So let's get started. As usual, you can buy the project from the link in the video description below. And remember, if you already bought part 1 or part 2, well then you don't need to buy this one. You can simply just use your download link to re-download that project, and then this project is also going to be included. If you lost your download link, then just message me and I'll resend it to you. But remember to include the email you used when you bought the project in the first place, so I know where to send it. The project is of course going to have all the code included, and I'm going to comment all the code so that it's going to be easier for you guys to read it and understand it. And all the sprites and everything I've been using in this tutorial is also included, of course. The first thing we need to do before we can create our tooltips is to set it up in the scene so that we have something to write our tooltip in. And for this tutorial I have added 3 sprites. 2 of them are only used for demonstration purposes in the end. That's the sword highlight and the sword normal. So you can see here it's just a slot sprite. And the third one is actually used as the background of our tooltip. So whenever we show a tooltip on our screen, this is going to be the background. If you haven't bought the project and you just want to create your own sprites, then just create a square box of some sort and then use it as the background. And you can of course use any color. Maybe you don't want the black color as I have created here. Maybe you want something brighter, like a light blue or something. So now when you have added your sprites, it's very important that you remember to select them and go to the texture type, and then you have to select Sprite 2D and UI. If you don't do this, then you won't be able to use them as sprites in your canvas and on your UI. So it's very important that you always remember this, else you can't find them when you try to add them. So as I stated before, this tooltip is going to be the background of our inventory. So the first thing we have to do is to go to our canvas, and I'm going to right click on the normal canvas that I'm using as my inventory, because we don't want to show our tooltip unless our inventory is shown anyway. So we might as well just use the same canvas so that our tooltip is going to go away when we close the inventory as well. So you can right click on the canvas, go to UI, and then you have to go to image. And this image is going to be the background. So might as well just press F2 to rename it and call it background. When you've done that, you need to add the source image, and the source image is going to be this tooltip as the background. So just click on the little radio button and then scroll down until you find your tooltip and then select it. So now you can see we have our tooltip on our screen. If you don't have anything on your screen, well, then it's because your canvas groups alpha is maybe set to 0 like I have here. So this is the standard setting if you just took the part 2 project. And the reason that it's 0 from the beginning is because that we want our inventory to be hidden from the get-go. But now when we are adding some new stuff, we want to be able to see whatever we are doing when we're moving stuff around. So might as well set this alpha to 1, and then we can always set it back to 0 when we're done adding our new stuff. So we came from the background here. Other than the background, we also need a text. So go to create, go to UI, and then add a text. And this text is going to be the text that is written on top of the tooltip. So it's going to be the description of it, the stats, and also the name of the item. So I want to create a white color here. I don't know what color you want. You can pick any color you want, but as standard I want the white color because my background is kind of dark. This text should be named size text because the text actually needs to change the size of this box here. So the more text we write here, the larger the box should get, so that we can actually write as much info about our item as we want to without having to worry about the size of this this box here, which is the sprite. As you can see, if it gets slower, then if it gets smaller, then of course you can see that the text is manipulated differently. So this is the first thing I want to switch, because if I write some more text here, see that when I write more text, it's just gonna go out of bounds of this box here. Now I wrote so much text that you can't see it in the box. But what I really want to do is to make sure that the box rescales like this, so all the text stays inside it, so you can see it and it's visible. So to fix this, we actually just need to add one component to our size text here. So go to add component, go to layout, and then select the component called content size fitter. And the content size fitter is gonna make sure that our text is gonna be visible inside the box, because it's gonna rescale this box here to fit the content inside of it. So the horizontal fit is just gonna be preferred size, and the vertical fit is gonna be preferred size. So as you can see here, now it just turned into a little small line because we don't have any text. But if I write hello world, you'll see that it actually rescales to fit this, the text inside of it. As you can see, if I write more text, it's just gonna get bigger, and if I write more lines, it's also gonna grow. So when we have added this, we're actually able to write as much text inside our tooltip as we want to. So the next thing we want to do is to make sure that this black box here scales accordingly to the text, so that the background will always be behind the text, so that the text won't overflow the edges of the background. So to make sure that the background scales with the text, the background needs to be the what's called the child of our text. So take your background and drag it onto your text, and then you need to place it correctly. And when we place this, well, then we want to make sure that our background goes a little over the edges of our text, so that our text doesn't go all the way to the edge of the background. So there's a little border around the text. It looks, you can of course do like this if you want to, make sure that there's no border around the text, but I think it looks a little better if there's actually a border between the background and the actual ending of the text. So just make like a little border around here. You can always adjust this later if you want to make it bigger or smaller. Yes, I'm happy with this. So now I need to make sure that my background scales accordingly to my text size here. And I can do that by clicking on my background and then going to my rect transform. And inside the rect transform there's this little tool here, and if you click on it you can see that the anchors is set as center. But I want my border to stretch accordingly to my text, so I have to click on this one down in the top right corner. As you can see, it's stretching, and it's going to stretch in all anchors. We can test if this works by adding some more text to the size text object. So if we copy hello world and paste it some more times, you'll see that our object actually gets wider, and if we paste something underneath it, you'll also see that the height of it also changes. You might have noticed that the text is not even visible on top of our tooltip right now. And the reason that it's not visible is because a parent is always rendered before its children. So this means that Unity is rendering the text, and then on top of the text it's actually rendering the background. So to fix this, we actually need to make a copy of our text here and put it as a child as well. So you have to take this size text and right click on it, duplicate it, and then open it and delete the background underneath. And this size text here is basically gonna be renamed to visual text, because it's the visual text that we can see in our tooltip. So if you take the visual text and make it as a child element of our size text, you'll see that the text is now actually visible and reflects this text we have written over here. So whenever you have some objects underneath a parent, you'll see that it's rendered in the order that they are put here. So the background is rendered first, and then the text is rendered on top of it. If I would switch these places, you'll see that the text becomes invisible because the visual text here is rendered before the background, so the background is rendered on top of our visual text. But we need to switch it back so that our text is always visible. So this basically means that whenever we need to show a tooltip on our screen by changing the visual text, well, then we also need to remember to change the size text, because the visual text only changes the text on the screen. Let's say that we pick up a mana potion. Well, then the size of the background is not going to fit until we go to the size text and change that to the exact same text, mana potion. So now you can see that the background fits the text inside of it. So this means that whenever we change to a new tooltip, well, then we need to make sure that we change both the size text and the visual text to get the correct effect out here in our game. Now that the scene is set up, we can actually start writing some code, and the code needs to be written inside our inventory script. So click on your script folder and go to your inventory script. Inside the inventory script, we need to add some new variables. So scroll to the top of your script and add some variables called public game object, tooltip, and public text called size text, and a public text called visual text. So these are the three objects we need. We need the tooltip game object so that we can hide and show it whenever we are mouse overing a slot with items in. We need the size text to be able to set the size of the text, and we need the visual text to be able to set the visual text. So these two are basically gonna be set at the same spot in our code at all times, so that we're sure that the size reflects the text and the other way around. Other than that, we need to add two functions. We need to add a function that shows this tooltip whenever we mouse over something, and we need to add a function that hides the tooltip whenever we are not mousing over something. So to do this, we can go underneath our update function. We have the save inventory, and then I'm going to create a new public void called show tooltip. And this function needs to take in a game object, because whenever we mouse over an inventory item or an inventory slot it is, we need to tell our inventory what kind of slot we just moused over, so that the inventory can check what item is there, and if there is an item there on the spot, well, then we need to write a tooltip out. So we need to create a game object here called slot, for example. So the first thing we want to do is to make sure that this works. So we just want to say tooltip dot set active to true. We're going to do this step by step, so we're going to take it a little at a time so I can show you how everything works. And then we're going to copy paste this function here. Actually, we don't even need the game object here, and this is going to be hide tooltip. And this is going to be false. So all these methods does now is to hide the tooltip and show the tooltip. So now we should be able to show and hide it. So when you have written that code, you can jump back into Unity, and the first thing we need to do is to set up those game objects we just made public. So if you click on your inventory, you'll see that you'll have 3 objects here now. The first one is the tooltip, the next one is size text, and the last one is the visual text. So the tooltip is the whole object here, so that's basically also our size text. And the reason that we want to put that there is because we want to be able to disable it like this, so that we can't see it until we mouse over an object, and then we should show it at the mouse position. So if you click on the inventory and drag the size text to the tooltip slot, and drag the size text again to the size text slot, so it only takes the text on it, and then you take the visual text and put it down here on the visual text slot. And the reason that we need those two is because we want to change the text from within our script whenever we hover an item. Well, then we need to tell the inventory which kind of item it is, so that we can write the correct text on the screen. Before we can test this, we need to add some functionality to our slot, because the slot needs to tell the inventory if the mouse is over it, and if it has some item on it. So if the slot has an item on it, it needs to tell the inventory to show the correct text. So if you go to your asset folder here, go to inventory, prefabs, and then click on the slot class, then we need to add a new component. And the component type we need to add is an event, because we need to fire an event every time we mouse over the inventory slot, so that we can tell if there is something on it. So we need to click add component, go to event, and then there is this new component here called an event trigger. And if you click on that, you'll see that there's a new add event button. So if you click on that as well, you'll see that there are different kinds of events, and we are interested in the event called pointer enter and pointer exit. So first of all, let's add the pointer enter. When you've added that, a new box will pop up, and you can add a new script here, so that it will fire a function whenever this event happens. So we added a pointer enter, which means that we'll fire an event whenever the pointer enters the slot. So you click the plus button, and then you take your inventory and drag onto, sorry, not that inventory, of course. You take the prefab inventory here and drag onto the empty slot here. Then you click on the function, go to inventory, and then you find the function called show tooltip. As you can see, it asks for a game object, because we made the structure like that so that it should send in the game object that it just hovered. So basically you can take the slot itself and drag onto this, so it sends itself with, so we know where on our inventory to place our mana potion or our tooltip, and we know what kind of item it is, because we can check on what item the slot has, or if it doesn't have an item, then we don't need to show the tooltip. So that's why we're sending in the slot here, so we can check if it has an item, and if it has an item, then we would show the correct tooltip. So the other thing we need to add is click event type on pointer exit, because when the mouse exits the slot, well, then we should stop showing the tooltip. So we have already the inventory here, so you can go to show tooltip, inventory, and then instead of having show tooltip, we should find the hide tooltip, which is here. So now hide tooltip triggered when we exit a slot, and show tooltip is triggered whenever we enter a slot. So before we can test if this works, we need to do one more thing. We need to make sure that our tooltip is hidden whenever we start our game, because we don't want to show it until we hover over one of our slots in our inventory. So to hide it, you just have to click this little checkbox up here to disable the whole game object, and then when we hover over one of the slots, well, then we're going to enable it. So after you've done that, you can run your game, and then you can mouse over one of the icons. As you can see here, we get an exception. And the reason that we get this exception is because that our variable here isn't static. Because what it does right now is that it tells you that the variable tooltip of the inventory has not been assigned. And if you click on the inventory, you'll see that it is already assigned here. It says tooltip and the size text is assigned here. And it even suggests that you probably need to assign the tooltip variable from the inventory script in the inspector. And the reason that this fails is because whenever you fire an event, apparently it doesn't take this exact inventory and fires the event on the script in that exact inventory where this one is assigned to. Maybe it uses the prefab because we assigned some stuff through prefabs or something. I'm not sure, because if you click on the inventory here, you'll see that nothing is assigned here, for example. So to fix this, we simply need to make our size text here on our inventory, which is the tooltip. We need to make it static, because when something is static, it's shared among every single instance of that object. So if we have 100 inventories and we assign the tooltip on one of them, then all 100 of them is going to have it assigned, for example. So Unity won't be able to find an inventory somewhere and call this this function where the tooltip isn't assigned. So we need to jump back into our script and then go to the top here where you have this tooltip. And I'm just going to make private static game object called tooltip with a small t. That's more correct, I guess. When you've done that, we need to go down here and fix these. Tooltip, small t as well. Tooltip, tooltip. And when you've done that, you can go up here and make a public game object called tool object. So you can also call it tooltip object. So this is the object we're going to assign in the inspector, and this is the object that we are actually going to use. And because it's static, it's shared among all instances. So down here, we're just going to say tooltip equals tooltip object, just like that. So if we save that and jump back into Unity and we click in the inspector, you'll see that we have this tooltip object here, and we just take our size text here and drag it onto here, and if we run it now, we shouldn't have any problems. Let's see. So we clear our console, and if we mouse over, you'll see that mana potion appears, which is our tooltip, and it hides whenever we leaves one of these slots here. So now we have the functionality for showing and hiding it. The next thing we need to do is to make sure that it appears at the right position. And when I mean say right position, I mean underneath the slot that we are taking our mouse over. So if I take my mouse over this slot, I want it to appear underneath here, underneath this slot here. The easiest way to make sure that we place our tooltip at the correct position is by introducing another object, because if we click on our size text here and make it appear by enabling it, you'll see that the parent object is actually not as large as the background, and whenever we place it, we'll be using the parent object here to place it, and if we would place it according to a slot in our inventory, well, then we'll have a problem with this border here, because this border would always be placed on top of the slot in the inventory. And to fix that, we would have to calculate the distance the border has, so that we can move it a little down and a little to the right. But the easier thing is actually just to introduce a new object, so that we are sure that we can just use the position of that object to position the tooltip. So that we won't have any problems with calculations and stuff, and it makes it a little cleaner. So To add this, we need to click on our canvas here that contains our size text. Click create, go to UI, and then click on an image. And the image doesn't need to have anything on it, so just remove the image component here. So all it has to do, the only thing it has to match is the width of the inventory. So if you take this, not the inventory, sorry, the tooltip, if you take the borders of this image here and just make sure that the top is aligned with the top about here, and the sides are perfectly aligned with the sides, because we're only going to use this point here, the top left point, to place the rest of the object. So you can take this pivot point here, if you click on the image, click on the rect tool here, and then drag it all the way to the top left corner. This size, the height here, is basically doesn't matter. You can put it here if you want to. So we're going to rename this image to tooltip, and then we're going to take the size text and everything and drag under it. So the next thing we're going to do is to click on our inventory, and instead of having the size text here as the tooltip object, well, then we're going to take the tooltip here and drag down here, so we have the new introduced object dragged to our tooltip. So if we disable our tooltip here and run our game again, it should still work as it did before, where our mana shows up, as you can see. Okay, so now that we have set that up, we can go to our script to write some extra code. So if we jump back into our script here, and notice that I can remember to zoom in now. I'm sorry I forgot that earlier, I just remembered. But if we jump into a code, we need to go all the way down to our show tooltip. As we can see here, our show tooltip function here. And this function needs to place our tooltip at the correct position. So first of all, we need to get the slot component from our game object here, because we need that later anyway. So let's say slot equals slot.get component slot. And basically what this line does is that it gets the correct component from our inventory. Let's just call it temp slot, so we don't confuse these two. The next thing I need to do is that I need to check if the slot is empty or not before I show the tooltip. So I need to make an if statement that says if the slot, temporary slot here, dot is empty, and my hover object equals null. And the reason that I'm introducing this hover object equals null is because I don't want to show the tooltips whenever I'm carrying another object around. If I'm trying to move some mana potion to another slot, I don't want this tooltip to pop up all the time when I'm moving around in the inventory. So if the slot is empty, and it should be isn't empty, of course, so if put an exclamation mark in here, so if the slot isn't empty, which means that there's an item there, well, then I'm gonna say tooltip, actually it's just this one down here, that's set active. And when it's active, then I need to set the position correctly. And the float x position is equal to my slot here, this game object up here, dot transform, dot position, dot x, plus slot padding left. And I'm adding the padding left because I'm adding that padding whenever I'm placing my slots, and I also need to put it in here to make sure that I'm aligning my tooltip. So the float dot position y pos equals slot dot transform dot position dot y, and this is going to be minus because I'm doing minus because that I want to move my tooltip down underneath my slot. If I want to move it above the slot, it should be plus, but it's going to be minus slot dot get component dot direct transform dot size delta dot y to get the height of the slot I just moved over, and then minus the slot padding top here. So here I'm calculating the x position to be exactly aligned on the left side by taking the transform position of the slot I just clicked, and then I'm adding this padding left to move it a little to the right. Then I'm saying the Y position is exactly the same as the slot, and then I'm gonna take the height of the slot minus the height of the slot to move it underneath it, and then I'm gonna take the slot padding again to move it further underneath so it doesn't overlap. Then I need to set the position of the tooltip, so I'm gonna say tooltip dot transform dot position equals new vector 2, and then I'm gonna say xpos, I just calculate that, and ypos because it just calculated that. So now I have set my position, and remember this is only happening if the slot isn't empty. So if the slot is empty and if the hover object is null, which means that I'm not moving anything around. So let's save this and jump back into Unity, and let's give it a try. Now nothing is coming up when I'm moving around on the empty slots. If I pick up a mana potion, the mana potion jumps up underneath here, and it's just, and if I pick up a health potion as well, it's going to be written mana potion underneath. But now you can see that it's actually placed at the correct position. Just going to make it large so we can see a little better. Here you'll see that it pops up here, but I'm not hiding it yet when I pick something up. But as you can see, if I pick up some stacks here, now there's written mana potions. If I pick this one up and I go over this, it doesn't show up again because I'm carrying something. But if I put it down and I go over, it shows mana potion. So now we have placed the tooltip at the correct position. The next thing we need to do is actually add the information inside the tooltips. To pass on the information from the item that we are hovering to the actually tooltip UI element, well, then we need to create a new function inside our item. So jump into your item script, see if I have it over here, and then we need to introduce some new functionality here. First of all, I want to create a new enumeration, because that one we already had is only the item type, which is mana and health. We are just going to leave these for now. You can always add more yourself, but I want to add the quality of the items. So public enum quality, and the quality is going to decide how rare or whatever those items are, or how good they are. So I'm just going to use the same as, for example, World of Warcraft, where we have common and we have uncommon and we have rare and we have epic, for example, and legendary, and then we have artifact. Yes. So when these has been added, then we can create a variable like we do here. We have our item type. Well, then we also need a quality for this specific item. So public quality. Yeah, let's just call it quality. Item quality here. Yes. And this one is gonna set the color for this item. So if we go down here underneath our max size, well, then we need to introduce some new fields as well. So some items should have stats, and I've just added a few stats here. So we're gonna make public float, and these are gonna be strength, and it's gonna be intellect, and it's gonna be agility, and it's gonna be stamina. So all these should be set from the inspector on the item before you pick it up. You can always generate your own random function that randomizes these according to the item, but I'm just going to create them here statically so that you can see that it actually works in a tooltip. Other than that, we also need a name, so public string name, because we want the name to be written on the item. Let's just call it item name so it doesn't conflict with anything, because the game object also has a name. And then public string description. So the description is basically a little line or little phrase about the item. For example, a mana potion, it says like use to restore mana, for example, or something. So this is why the description is here. You can always avoid to add this. You don't need to add this all the time if you don't want a description to be on one of your items, for example, an armor piece or something. When you've added all the fields, well, then you need to create a new function down here, and because whenever you have collected all the information about the item, for example, the name of the item, the quality of it, and everything, well, then you need to return it as a string so that the tooltip can show this information. So we're going to make a public string called getTooltip. And this string is basically going to contain stats, so we're going to say string stats. And the reason that we call string here instead of void is because we're going to return the string in the end. So we're going to write stats equals new string.empty. And we always say string.empty because some of these might not be instantiated at some point, and it's going to give us an error if we don't instantiate it as something. So we're just going to instantiate it as string.empty. And string.color, string.empty. And we're also going to have a string called newLine equals string.empty. String color is going to decide the color of the item, and it's going to be set from the quality here. So I'm going to assign a color to each of these qualities, so that whenever we run through this getTooltip, it's going to assign the correct color. So if it's epic, for example, it's going to be purple or whatever. And the new line is basically just going to make sure that when we have written our description, if there is a description on our weapon, it's going to make a new line, so the stats is going to be written underneath it. You'll see later. So first of all, we want to add the new line. So if our description is not equal to string.empty. So if our description contains something, if we have decided to add description to this item, well, then our new line is equal to the escape character new line. So this one, if we add that to our string in the end, this new line, well, then we're going to make a new line in our code, in our tooltip, sorry, not code, of course, so that our stats is going to be written on the line underneath the description. So after this, I'm going to make a switch case, and I'm going to switch on the quality. And here you'll see all the qualities comes up if you're going to make a switch case like this, and we don't need any default. So if it's common, then the color should be equal to white. If it's uncommon, then the color should be equal to green or lime, I think it's called, that one I want. If it's rare, then color should be equal to navy blue. If it's epic, the color should be equal to what's called magenta, I think. Magenta. I think it's like this, magenta, yes. And if it's legendary, the color should be equal to orange. Not sure if it's orange though. If it's artifact, then the color is equal to red. So now we can use these colors down here when we return the string. And the reason that we need to make these colors and these strings in here is because out here in Unity, if you write some text, for example, this mana potion here, well, if we put some tags up here, let's say that we show this one here. No, not the stack size, the tooltip. This mana potion. Let's take that. This is the one that visual. So if I would make a tag around here and say color equals red, for example, and I would go on the other side here and end the tag like this, you'll see that the mana potion here, the text turns into red, and that's exactly what we want to do. So that's why I'm making those tags in there, so that we can encapsulate the text that we return in these different tags, so that we'll get the result out here that we want. Just gonna remove this, and I'm gonna hide this one again. So let's get back to our code. So now we have set up all the colors here. When we've done that, well, then we need to set up the stats. So if for example strength, if that's larger than 0, well, then we need to add strength to our tooltip. If it's just 0, well, then we haven't set it and we don't need to write it in our tooltip, because there's no point in making a weapon or something and writing it has 0 strength, for example. So stats, and stats is going to be equal to all the stats put together here. So stats plus equals, and we're going to start with a new line, so that we always put a new line in front of the stats. and it should be new line plus strength to string plus strength. And I'm going to make a little space here so the strength is not going to be written right up against the numbers. And I need to do the exact same things here for intellect. So I'm going to write intellect. Just going to replace all these. Intellect and intellect. And then we also going to have a agility and a stamina. Agility. And then we have our stamina. And now we have set up, so when we run through this if statements here, all these, we'll see if we have strength, we add strength to the stats. If we have intellect, we add intellect to the stats. Agility, we add agility, and if we have stamina, well, then we add stamina. So we will only show the stats if we have more than 0 of it. So after that, we need to return string.format. So we need to return the stats, or the whole tooltip. And we can do that by saying, well, color equals, zoom a little more in so you can see, plus color. So we're going to write our plus color here. And then we're going to set the size, because this is the headline, this is the name of the item. And the name of the item I want to be a little bigger than the rest, so I'm going to set the size to 16. Then we're going to make 0 here. And then I'm going to end the size tag here by saying slash and then size. And then I'm going to end the color tag by saying slash and then color. So that's the first part. This part is going to write out the, what is it called? This is going to write out the name of the item. So basically this is going to be color equals red, for example, and then it's going to set the size of the name of the item, and the name of the item is going to go here, because I'm going to make a comma here. After this I'm going to make comma, and the first one is going to be item name. So because it's the first one, it's going to go on the spot where it's 0 inside the scope is. If I make one more comma here and I say description, well, then the description would go here. If I would replace this with 1, it would go in there, the description, which shouldn't be there. And then I'm going to add the stats at the end. So if I would put a 2 here, this is like 0, 1 and 2. If I would put 2 here, well, then the stats would be placed on this position instead. But I'm not interested in that. I'm only interested in putting the item name in here where the size is 16 and the color is whatever I put up here according to the quality of the weapon. I hope it makes sense. So after this, I'm going to set the size back into 14. So I'm going to say size equals 14. And then I want to make the text, the description of the text, I want to make italic, so it's like tilted a little. So I'm gonna say I to make sure that it's that, and then I'm gonna set the color equal to lime. You can always change these to other colors if you want to. And then I'm gonna make sure that I have a new line. So I'm gonna add my new line here, and then I'm gonna write my description. And I'm going to write my description by simply putting 1, because I have description here and it's going to be placed in here now. And when I've done that, I'm going to end the color, because I don't want the rest of the code to be lime. I'm going to end my italic here by laying /I. So that was the description. Now I need to write all my stats here I've added to the string. And I can do that by simply saying 2 like this, and then I'm going to end the size here, because all the stats needs to be the same size as the description. So all this line basically sets up everything so that it returns the correct size and correct size of the description and the correct order of the description, and all this will give me the description that is shown on the tooltip. I hope this makes sense. Else go Google rich text formats and you'll see how everything works. Because the reason we can do this is because out here on our text, this rich text is checked. If it's not checked, then you can't get the colors. Okay, so now the description is in place, we need to get it from within our inventory. So to do that, we need to add a couple of lines of code here, because we need to set the text of the visual text and the size text. Because if you remember from the beginning, when I explained you that if we set the visible text alone, well, then the size of the inventory is not gonna fit, or not the size of the inventory, but the size of the tooltip is not gonna fit. And if I set the size text only, well, then the visible text is not going to have it, so we can't see the text on our screen anyway. So we need to set both of them. So the visual text, the text equals temp slot that get, oh, that current item I think it's called, yeah, that get tooltip. So basically this says that whenever we hover a slot, then we make a reference to the slot script on it. If that slot isn't empty, well, then we take the text from that item, we calculate, or we don't calculate, but we figure out what kind of items that is there and what info it has, and we get all the stats, and then return it to the visual text so that we can write it on the tooltip. And then we say size text, the text equals temp slot. Actually, I can say equals visual text. The text, just to make them equal like this. So what I just did was that I made sure that, if we go out in Unity, made sure that this size text here is equal to the visual text here, and the visual text is the text we see on screen, and the size text is the one that decides the size of the tooltip. So we need to do one more thing to make sure we don't get any errors as we did before with our tooltip here. We need to make these two static as well, so we don't run into that trigger problem or event problem as we did before. So if we jump up here in the top, we need to rename these to size text object and this one visual text object. And then I'm going to create a private static text called size text, and then I'm going to create a private static text called visual text. And down here I'm going to do the exact same thing as I did with my tooltip. I'm going to say size text equals size text object. I'm going to say visual text equals visual text object. So I can set them from the inspector and I can assign these. So now this shouldn't be null referenced ever. So if we save this, jump back into our inspector and click on our inventory, then we should make sure that these two are assigned again. So we take our size text, drag onto size text, and we take our visual text and drag onto this. And just make sure you save everything, save your scene, save your project. Okay, so now this should actually work. If we click on our mana here, not this one of course, in our prefabs, and go into our mana, we'll see that there is an item name and a description, and my item name is just going to be mana potion, and the description gonna say use restores an amount of mana. Just gonna copy this, and then I'm gonna go to my health, and the item name is gonna be health potion, and the description is gonna be use restore an amount of health. And there is no strength, agility, or intellect on these. So, and they're both going to be common. So if I run my game now, I can try to pick up a couple of items, pick up some health and some mana potions. And if I mouse over health potion, you'll see that it's written health potion, use restore an amount of health. And if I mouse over my mana potion, it's going to be written mana potion, use restore an amount of mana. But I can see there is a problem here. The position of the tooltip is not correct. It's too far to the left. So, and I have a hunch of what could be if I click my size text here. So stop your game and go back into a hierarchy here and file your tooltip and click on the size text, you can see that the text has the anchor point in the middle, and it's not supposed to have the anchor point in the middle. It has to have the anchor point in the top left corner here. So this is the parent, and the others here doesn't really matter. So take the anchor point of the size text and put it in the top left corner. And when you've done that, you can run your game again, pick the items up, and you'll see that it has the correct position. It's aligned with the slot now underneath it. So the next thing I want to do is to add that extra item, that little sort item, so we can test out the rest of the functionality. And to do that, I'm just gonna copy one of my other items. So for example, let's click on the health item here, right click on it, and click duplicate. That makes a copy of it, and we want to create it as a sort. So when you have duplicated it, just click on one of them, press F2 and call the sort. You've done that, well, then you can go to your scene here and then move it a little away from the others. So when it's moved away, we can change the stuff in it. So right now type is health. We could add another type if we want to. It's not really needed right now. We're just gonna change the other stats. The quality, we want to make an epic weapon maybe. Sprite, we can click on the sprite here, go all the way to the swords here, and say sword normal. The highlighted sprite, you can click here in the inspector, go all the way down, select the highlighted sprite. Max stack size 1, it's not going to be able to stack a sword. Strength, well, we want 120 strength. 0 intellect, we want 80 agility, and we want 150 stamina. The name of the sword is going to be awesome sword. Awesome sword, and we can give a description. This is a very awesome sword. That's the description. So now when we run into this, we should pick the sword up with all these current stats, and notice that because intellect is 0, it's not going to have any intellect on it. So let's give it a try and see if we now we picked up the sword and a mouse over it, and awesome sword. This is a very awesome sword, and it has 120 strength, it has 80 agility, and it's 150 stamina. So that's basically the tooltip part. I don't know if we should make some small fixes so that whenever you pick items up and you try to split them, we shouldn't show the tooltip or something. So we can also do that. So when we split this, we should just hide the tooltip, and we can do that from our code. So jump back into your inventory script, and then you need to go to the top here where you have that that UI item that actually enables you to select the stack size, and I think it's called select stack size, if I could find it. Stack size, what is it called? There it is. Go to definition. Yeah, here it is, select stack size. So we need to make it static as we did with the others. So basically we have this public game object select stack size, and we are also going to make a private static game object called select stack size static. I'm just going to call it so I don't have to change a lot of other code around. So this select stack size static, well, we basically need to go save this and then go to our start function here and say select stack size static equals select stack size. There we go. So when we've done this, to rebuild, see, yes, when we've done this, well, then we can go and make sure that the select stack size is when the select stack size is shown, well, then we need to hide our tooltip, and we can do that if we go to, what is it called, select stack size, see where it is, stack size info, split stack, here we go, you said it's default here. So set stack size info, I guess this function is showing select stack size, and when it's shown, well, then we need to say tooltip dot set active false, because this means that when we show our stack size, well, then we are hiding our tooltip. And we also need to go to the function where we are showing our tooltip. So if I just copy this and search for that, here we go, show tooltip. Well, we only want to show our tooltip if our static select stack size static dot active self, yes, if it's true. So this function or this line of code here checks if the select stack size is active, and if it's active, well, then we don't want to show this, so we need to make an exclamation mark in front of here. So we only show our tooltip if select stack size isn't active. So I hope you understand what we just did. We made sure to hide the tooltip when we show the select stack size, and we made sure that we can show tooltips when the select stack size is up. So let's save this. Then jump back into Unity and play your game right away to test if it works. So just pick up a couple of items so you can split the stacks. When you've done that, just make sure that you can see your tooltips here, and if you hold shift down and click it, you'll see the tooltip disappears and that you can actually split the stack here. And when you're done with that, the tooltips appears again. And when the stack is open, you'll see that there is no tooltip showing up. So that's basically it for this tutorial. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any requests, if you have any questions or problems with concerning this this project, well, then just write me a message, private message, or you can also post a comment under the video. If you haven't done it already, then please support me by buying this project. If you already bought one of the former versions or parts of this project, well, then you can simply just re-download it by using your download link. If you don't have your download link, then just message me and I'll resend it to you. So yeah, that's basically it for this part. Thank you so much for watching.